Captain Thomas Reed stood at the wide viewport of the UVS Thunderchild, watching the stars drift by. His ship, one of Earth's newest battleships, cut through space like a sword through silk. The quiet of his morning observation was broken by the urgent beeping of his personal communicator. Captain to the command center. Priority 1. Reed's boots echoed against the metal floor as he strode through the corridors. Crew members snapped to attention as he passed. But he barely noticed. After 15 years in space, he could tell from the tone of that message that something big was coming. The command center's doors slid open with a soft hiss. Intelligence Officer Lisa Brooks stood at the main display, her face lit by the blue glow of holographic star charts. Next to her, Reed's XO, Michael Hayes, wore the kind of expression that meant trouble. "Captain," Brooks said, not wasting time with formalities. "We found it. The reason for all those lost colonies." She touched the display, and a massive space station appeared. It spun slowly in the hologram, bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. The station was easily 5 miles across, shaped like a metal flower, with 6 giant petals spreading out from a central hub. "The Aegis," Brooks continued, "the Council's most secure outpost in this sector. Our deep cover agents confirm it's been coordinating all attacks on human settlements in the Perseus Arm." Reed stepped closer to the display. "That's well inside Council space. How did we get these scans?" "We lost 3 stealth drones getting this data," Hayes said quietly, "and 2 good pilots." Reed's jaw tightened. He'd written too many letters to families of lost crew members. Each one felt like a piece of his soul being chipped away. "Show me the defensive capabilities," he ordered. The hologram changed, highlighting layers of shields, weapon emplacements, and patrol routes. Numbers scrolled past, showing shield strengths, weapon yields, and crew estimates. Reed had seen fortress stations before, but this was different. This was meant to be untouchable. "The Council calls it their eternal sentinel," Brooks explained. "They believe it's impossible to crack. 3 different species have tried. All failed." "But you found something," Reed said. It wasn't a question. Brooks wouldn't have called him here otherwise. She smiled grimly. "Watch this." The display zoomed in on a section of the central hub. Every 48 hours, they have to vent excess plasma from their main reactor. It creates a 3-second window where a small section of their shields drops to let the plasma through. Hayes leaned forward. 3 seconds. That's impossible to time. Even if we could get close enough. "We also found this," Brooks interrupted. She brought up a new image showing energy readings. "Their shield grid has a fundamental flaw. It's designed to stop every known weapon in Council space. But not human weapons," Reed finished, starting to see where this was going. "Exactly. Their shields are tuned to energy weapons and antimatter torpedoes. Our graviton cannon operates on principles they've never seen before. It's like they built the perfect defense against battleships, but we're bringing a submarine to a surface fight." Reed studied the data carefully. The graviton cannon was new, experimental. They'd only tested it 3 times, and one of those tests had nearly torn the ship apart. "But if it worked, what's the catch?" he asked. Hayes stepped forward. "We'd have to get within 5,000 kilometers to be sure of the shot. That means pushing through 3 layers of defense fleets, automated weapon platforms, and point defense grids. And we'd have exactly 3 seconds to fire when their shields drop, or the whole thing's a waste. And those defense fleets. At least 20 ships at all times. Probably more once they detect us." Reed walked around the display, studying the station from all angles. The Thunderchild was good, the best humanity had ever built. But these odds were terrible. On paper, it looked impossible. But if they could pull it off, how many colonies have we lost to attacks from this station? He asked quietly. 7 in the past year, Brooks replied. Thousands dead. Tens of thousands displaced. Reed nodded slowly. He touched the display, zooming out to show the whole sector. All those colonies, all those people looking to build new lives among the stars. They deserve better than to live in fear of the next attack. Send a message to command, he said finally. Tell them the Thunderchild is volunteering for a special operation, and get me everything we have on Council patrol patterns in that sector. Hayes straightened. You're taking the mission. Someone has to show the Council that humanity isn't going to just roll over and die. Reed's eyes were hard as he stared at the slowly rotating station. And I want our new graviton cannon to be the last thing that station ever sees. As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, Reed continued studying the display. Impossible odds had never stopped humanity before. They sure as hell weren't going to stop him now. Admiral James Walker had seen a lot in his 30 years of service, but the hologram floating above his conference table still made him pause. The Aegis station rotated slowly, its massive form casting electronic shadows across the faces of Earth's Defense Council. You're telling me, he said slowly, that Captain Reed wants to take one ship against that. The 12 members of the Defense Council sat around the large table in their underground bunker beneath New Washington. The room was silent except for the soft hum of air filters and the occasional shuffle of papers. Not just any ship, General Mary Roberts replied. She tapped her tablet, and an image of the Thunderchild appeared next to the station. The Thunderchild is our most advanced vessel, and that graviton cannon of hers isn't in any Council database. One ship is still one ship, said Colonel Frank Thompson, leaning forward in his chair. The Council has 20 ships guarding that station at all times. 20. And those are just the ones we can see. Admiral Walker rubbed his temples. The losses they'd taken from Council attacks had been heavy. 7 colonies gone, thousands dead, but sending the Thunderchild on what looked like a suicide mission. That was a hard call to make. The room's door opened, and Captain Reed himself walked in. He looked tired but determined, still wearing his ship's black uniform with its silver trim. Behind him came Intelligence Officer Brooks, carrying a large data drive. Captain, Walker said, you've got 10 minutes to convince us. This isn't a fancy way to commit suicide. Reed nodded and plugged the data drive into the table's system. New images appeared in the air, detailed scans of the station's defense grid, patrol routes, and shield configurations. The Council thinks they're untouchable, Reed began. That's their weakness. They've built their defenses to stop anything they know about, but they don't know everything about us. He brought up a simulation showing the Thunderchild's approach vector. We found 3 blind spots in their sensor grid, spots they don't think matter because no known ship can use them. But the Thunderchild can. And the defense fleet? Thompson asked. We don't have to beat them all. Brooks cut in. We just need to get close enough for one shot. The graviton cannon will do the rest. Reed touched another control, and the simulation changed to show the cannon's effects. Their shields are useless against graviton waves. One direct hit during their plasma venting cycle, and the whole station's power grid will collapse. After that, its own reactor will tear it apart. General Roberts studied the data carefully. The timing would have to be perfect. We can do it, Reed said firmly. My crew is the best you've got. And my XO, Michael Hayes, has already started picking special crew members for key positions. Walker stood up and walked around the table, studying the simulation from all angles. If you fail, we lose our best ship and crew. The Council will know we tried to hit them, and they'll hit back harder than ever. And if we do nothing? Reed asked quietly. How many more colonies do we lose? How many more families get the news that their loved ones are gone because we were too careful? The room fell silent again. Walker looked around at the Council members. He saw the same struggle on their faces that he felt in his gut. The safe choice was to say no, to look for another way, a safer way. But humanity hadn't reached the stars by playing it safe. Show me your full attack plan, Walker said finally. Everything. How you get in, how you time the shot, and most importantly, how you get out afterward. Reed's face broke into a small smile. Yes, sir. He brought up a new set of tactical displays. We start with a series of quantum jumps through the Carina Nebula. For the next hour, Reed laid out his plan. It was crazy, dangerous, and pushed the edges of what they thought possible. But it was also brilliant. The council members leaned forward in their seats, asking questions, suggesting tweaks, and slowly coming around to the idea that this might actually work. 3 weeks, Walker said when Reed finished. You've got 3 weeks to prepare. After that, the council's patrol patterns will change and all this intelligence goes stale. Reed stood straight and nodded. 3 weeks is all we need, sir. Don't make me regret this, Captain. Walker's voice was firm, but there was respect in his eyes. Show those council bastards why they should have left humanity alone. Yes, sir. Reed saluted and turned to leave, Brooks right behind him. They had a lot of work to do and not much time to do it. As the door closed behind them, Walker looked back at the slowly rotating hologram of the Aegis station. In 3 weeks, that station would either be space debris or humanity would learn a hard lesson about reaching too far. He hoped they were making the right choice. The Thunderchild hung in Earth's orbital shipyard, surrounded by construction drones and work crews. Chief Engineer Robert Mills watched through the repair bay window as another crew attached new armor plates to the ship's hull. He checked his tablet, marking off another item on his endless list of modifications. How's the reactor holding up? Dr. Emily Parker asked, walking up beside him. The young scientist had barely slept in the past week, working non-stop on the shield modifications that might keep them alive during the mission. It's not happy, Mills replied, running a hand through his graying hair. We're pushing it to 120% capacity just to power your new shield system. We need every bit of that power. Emily pulled up her own display, showing shield simulations. The Council's weapons hit harder than anything we've dealt with before. Standard shields would fold in seconds. Their conversation was interrupted by the heavy footsteps of Captain Reed, who entered the repair bay with Lieutenant David Cooper, the ship's AI specialist. Talk to me, Reed ordered. Are we on schedule? Mills brought up the main status board. Hull reinforcement is at 80%. New power conduits are in place. But I'm worried about the reactor, sir. We're pushing it hard. The reactor has to hold, Reed said firmly. What about the shield modifications? Emily stepped forward. The new harmonics are working better than expected. Watch this. She started a simulation on the main screen. It showed a council plasma beam hitting their modified shields. Instead of trying to block the blast, the shield seemed to bend around it, absorbing the energy. We're not just stopping their weapons, she explained. We're taking that energy and feeding it back into our systems. Every shot they land actually helps power our shields. Unless they overwhelm us, Mills added. Too much power at once could blow the whole system. Reed nodded, then turned to Cooper. How are the AI updates coming? The new combat algorithms are online, Cooper said, his fingers dancing over his tablet. I've run 1,000 simulations. Our targeting computers can now track council ships even when they use their phasing technology. And the main AI can handle targeting calculations fast enough to hit that 3-second window we need. The captain walked to the window, watching the work crews. 2 days left. Is that enough time? It has to be, Mills answered. He checked another reading and frowned. Though I'd feel better if we had another week to test everything. We don't have a week. Reed turned back to his crew. The council changes their patrol patterns in 48 hours. It's now or never. A young technician ran into the repair bay, nearly out of breath. Sir, we just got the final modifications for the graviton cannon installed. Ready for testing. Reed looked at his team. Let's see it. They walked together to the ship's main weapon control room. The graviton cannon was their secret weapon, something the Council had never seen before. Instead of traditional energy weapons or missiles, it fired concentrated waves of gravitational force. In theory, it could tear a ship apart from the inside out. The test target was an old satellite, positioned 5,000 kilometers from the ship. the same distance they'd need to be from the Aegis station. Powering up, Mills announced. Warning lights flashed as energy flowed into the massive weapon. Graviton chamber at full charge. Fire, Reed ordered. The ship shuddered slightly as the cannon activated. On their screens, they watched the invisible graviton wave hit the target. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the satellite seemed to crumple like a paper ball, crushed by forces it was never meant to handle. Direct hit, Cooper confirmed. Total target destruction in 2.8 seconds. Emily studied the readings. Power consumption was within expected ranges. The new reactor modifications are holding. Reed allowed himself a small smile. Good. Now we just have to do that again, at exactly the right moment, while 20 council ships try to kill us. Just another day at the office, Mills joked, but his eyes were serious. They spent the next 2 days running final checks, testing systems, and making last-minute adjustments. The crew worked in shifts, sleeping when they could, everyone knowing that humanity's best chance against the Council rested on their shoulders. Finally, on the morning of the mission, Captain Reed stood in the Thunderchild's command center. His crew was at their stations, systems were running at full power, and the shipyard's repair crews had cleared out. All departments, report status, he ordered. One by one, his crew responded. Engineering ready, reactor at full power. Weapons systems online, graviton cannon charge. Shield modifications active and stable. AI systems operating at peak efficiency. Navigation plots confirmed. Reed took a deep breath. They had done everything they could to prepare. Now it was time to see if it would be enough. Send word to command, he ordered. The Thunderchild is ready for Operation Breakpoint. The Thunderchild moved silently through space, its hull dark against the backdrop of stars. Navigator Jessica Thompson stared at her screens, watching the tiny dots that marked Council patrol ships. They were getting closer to the Aegis station with each carefully planned jump. Status report, Captain Reed whispered, though he knew the Council couldn't hear them through space. Holding at jump point 4, Thompson replied. Council patrols are exactly where intelligence said they'd be. She allowed herself a small smile. They're so confident in their sensors, they don't even change their routes. Hexo Hayes stood behind her chair, studying the patrol patterns. Like clockwork, almost makes this too easy. Don't jinx it, Reed warned. They had already made 3 quantum jumps, each one bringing them closer to their target. The Thunderchild's new stealth systems had worked perfectly so far, making them nearly invisible to Council sensors. Lieutenant Cooper spoke up from his AI control station. Sir, I'm reading increased communication between Council ships. Regular status updates, but more frequent than before. They sense something, Reed said. They may not see us, but they know something's not right. He turned to his weapons officer. Status of the graviton cannon. Charged and ready, sir. Power level stable. Dr. Parker's voice came through the internal comm system. Shield harmonics are holding steady. The new modifications are working better than in our tests. Reed nodded. They were as ready as they'd ever be. Thompson, begin approach pattern Delta. Nice and slow. The massive ship crept forward, using the natural radiation from nearby stars to mask its movement. Thompson's fingers danced over her controls, making tiny adjustments to keep them in the sensor blind spots she discovered. Council patrol ship at 270, Cooper announced, passing within 10,000 kilometers. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. The Council ship, shaped like a silver arrowhead, glided past their position. If their stealth systems failed now, they'd be detected instantly. They're turning, Hayes said tensely. Hold position, Reed ordered. Let them make the first move. Seconds stretched into minutes as they watched the Council ship complete its patrol route. Finally, it turned away, continuing on its predetermined path. Clear, Cooper confirmed. They didn't detect us. Thompson released her breath. Ready for final approach, sir. The Aegis station is just beyond the next jump point. Reed stood from his command chair and walked to the main viewport. In the distance, he could just make out a faint gleam, the first visual sign of their target. "Show me the station," he ordered. The main screen lit up with telescopic images. The Aegis hung in space like a metal flower, its weapon ports gleaming dully in the starlight. Around it, council ships moved in careful patterns, protecting their precious fortress. "I count 23 ships," Hayes reported. "More than we expected." "Doesn't matter," Reed replied. "We only need 3 seconds." He turned to his crew. "This is it, people. Everything we've trained for. Thompson, plot our final jump. Take us in close, using that radiation cluster for cover." "Course plotted, sir." "Engineering, status." Chief Mill's voice came through clear. "Reactor at full power, all systems green." "She's ready, Captain." Reed took one last look at the tactical display. In a few minutes, they would either make history or become part of it. Everything depended on perfect timing and a little bit of luck. "Send final status update to command," he ordered. "Tell them we're beginning our attack run." Hayes moved to his station. "Message sent. We're on our own now, sir." "Just how I like it." Reed sat back in his command chair and fastened his safety harness. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." Throughout the massive ship, crews rushed to their positions. In engineering, Mills watched his power readings carefully. In the shield control room, Dr. Parker made final adjustments to her systems. Every person aboard knew their role and what was about to happen. "Jump coordinates locked in," Thompson announced. "Ready on your order." Reed looked at each of his bridge crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They had trained for this. They were ready. "Execute jump," he commanded. "Take us in." The stars blurred as the Thunderchild made its final quantum jump, leaping through space toward its date with destiny. In a few moments, they would either strike a blow for humanity that would never be forgotten, or they would join the long list of those who had tried and failed to breach the Aegis. As the jump ended and the station appeared before them in all its massive glory, Reed spoke one final time. "Let's show them what humanity can do." The Thunderchild burst out of its quantum jump directly behind a cluster of asteroids. For one precious moment, everything was quiet. Then all hell broke loose. "Multiple contacts," Lieutenant William Taylor shouted from Tactical. "Council ships responding to our presence." Captain Reed watched as the enemy vessels turned toward them like angry wasps defending their nest. The Council ships were beautiful in a deadly way, their silver hulls gleaming as they moved to attack positions. 23 hostile vessels closing fast, Cooper reported from his AI station. "Their weapons are charging." "Shields up," Reed ordered. "Dr. Parker, now would be a good time to show us what those modifications can do." The first volley of Council plasma beams struck the Thunderchild's shields. Instead of the expected impact, the energy seemed to flow around the ship like water. "Shields holding." Dr. Parker's voice was excited. "Power absorption at 60% efficiency. It's working better than our simulations." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Taylor, target the 3 nearest ships. Show them what human weapons can do." The Thunderchild's conventional weapons opened up. Rail guns fired massive slugs of metal at near-light speed, while missile pods launched swarms of guided projectiles. The Council ships, expecting energy weapons, were caught off guard by the primitive but effective assault. "Direct hits on 2 targets," Taylor reported with satisfaction. "Their shields are failing." But the Council ships recovered quickly. They spread out in an attack formation that Reed had never seen before, their movements perfectly coordinated. "Incoming fire from all directions," Hayes warned. The ship shuddered as multiple plasma beams struck their shields. In engineering, Chief Mills watched his power readings spike dangerously. "We can't take too many hits like that," he warned over the comm. "Shield power absorption is working, but the reactor's straining to handle the extra energy." Reed gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. Thompson, start evasive pattern echo. Taylor, concentrate fire on their lead ships. We need to break their formation. The massive human battleship moved with surprising grace, dodging between enemy vessels. Their rail guns continued firing, the simple kinetic weapons proving surprisingly effective against shields designed to stop energy attacks. Council ships adapting to our weapons, Cooper announced. They're adjusting their shield frequencies. As expected, Reed nodded. Time for Phase 2. Deploy the drones. Dozens of small, unmanned vessels shot out from the Thunderchild's launch bays. The drones were simple devices, little more than engines and basic shields, but they served their purpose. The Council ships scattered, their perfect formation breaking as they tried to track multiple targets. It's working, Hayes exclaimed. Their formation is compromised. But their success was short-lived. A new alarm blared through the bridge. Station defenses activating, Taylor warned. Multiple weapon platforms powering up. The Aegis station itself joined the battle, its massive weapon arrays coming to life. Beams of energy thick as buildings lashed out at the human ship. Evasive action, Reed ordered. Thompson, get us behind those outer defense platforms. Thompson's hands flew over her controls. The Thunderchild rolled and turned, using the station's own defense platforms as cover from its main weapons. Shield status, Reed demanded. Holding at 60%, Dr. Parker reported. But we're taking more hits than we can absorb. A massive blast caught them from the side. Emergency lights flashed as power fluctuated throughout the ship. Hull breach on Deck 4, Mills reported. Emergency containment holding. But sir, we need to make our move soon. We won't last in a prolonged fight. Reed checked the mission timer. The station's next plasma vent was due in less than 5 minutes. They needed to get closer, but the space between them and their target was filled with Council ships and energy beams. Cooper, analysis. Find me a path through this mess. The AI specialist worked furiously at his station. Calculating. Got it. There's a gap in their coverage at bearing 317. If we time it right, their own ships will block the station's main weapons. Thompson, plot the course. Taylor, prepare for maximum suppression fire on my mark. Reed opened the ship-wide comm. All hands, secure for high-G maneuvers. This is going to get rough. The Thunderchild's engines flared bright as plasma, pushing the massive ship into a tight turn. Council ships fired continuously, their weapons creating a deadly web of energy beams. But the human ship had one more surprise. The energy their shields had been absorbing wasn't gone. It had been stored. Dr. Parker, Reed commanded, release the absorbed energy. All of it. A massive pulse of power burst from the Thunderchild's shields, temporarily blinding nearby Council sensors. In that moment of confusion, the human ship made its move. Full power to engines. Reed ordered, take us in. The Thunderchild shot forward like a bullet, diving straight toward the gap in the Council's defenses. They were committed now. Either they would reach their firing position in time, or the mission, and their lives, would end in the next few minutes. The Thunderchild surged forward through the gap in the Council's defenses, its engines burning bright enough to rival nearby stars. Inside the ship, every system was pushed to its absolute limit. Hull temperature critical, Chief Mills shouted from engineering. The reactor room glowed an angry red as warning lights flashed everywhere. We're running at 140% capacity. She wasn't built for this kind of strain. Captain Reed gripped his chair as another blast rocked the ship. She'll hold, Chief. She has to. Time to plasma vent. 3 minutes, Hayes reported, wiping sweat from his forehead. The bridge was getting hotter as their cooling systems struggled to keep up. The Aegis station loomed larger in their view screens, its massive form now filling their entire field of vision. Council ships swarmed around them like angry bees, their weapons creating constant streams of deadly energy. Shields failing on decks 5 through 8. Dr. Parker's voice was strained. The absorption system can't handle this much input. We're going to lose containment. Reroute power from life support if you have to. Reed ordered. We only need a few more minutes. Lieutenant Taylor's tactical station erupted in new alarms. 6 more council ships breaking orbit from the far side of the station. They're on an intercept course. The situation was becoming desperate. The Thunderchild had fought its way closer to the station than any other ship in history, but the cost was showing. Scorch marks covered their hull, and several decks were running on emergency power. 2 minutes to plasma vent, Hayes announced. Reed opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. Everything we've got, everything we've trained for, comes down to the next 2 minutes. Hold your stations, hold the line. Hooper's AI systems were working overtime, predicting enemy movements and adjusting their defenses. Sir, I'm detecting power buildups in the station's main reactor. The vent sequence is starting. Thompson, get us into firing position. Reed ordered. Taylor, target that vent port the moment it opens. The navigator's hands flew over her controls, guiding their wounded ship through the deadly maze of energy beams and enemy vessels. The Thunderchild groaned under the strain, its metal frame protesting as it was pushed beyond its design limits. Primary power failing. Mills shouted, switching to backup systems. Shields down to 20%. Parker added, we can't take another direct hit. 1 minute to vent sequence. Hayes called out. The council ships seemed to realize what they were trying to do. Their attacks became more desperate, more concentrated. A lucky shot broke through their weakened shields, tearing a gash along the Thunderchild's port side. Breach on deck 3. Cooper reported. Emergency bulkheads holding. 45 seconds. Reed watched as their target grew closer on the main screen. The vent port was visible now, a small weak point in the station's otherwise perfect defenses. Everything depended on hitting that target at exactly the right moment. Graviton cannon status, he demanded. Charged and ready, Taylor responded. But sir, we're getting some dangerous power fluctuations. The cannon might only give us 1 shot. 1 shot is all we need. 30 seconds. The ship shuddered as another blast struck home. Emergency sirens wailed throughout the vessel as more systems failed under the strain. Reactor going critical. Mills warned. We can't hold this power level. 15 seconds. Reed leaned forward in his chair. Steady, steady. The vent port. Cooper shouted. Energy readings spiking. They're starting the sequence. 10 seconds. Get ready. Reed's eyes were locked on the target. 5 seconds. The vent port began to open, a small gap appearing in the station's perfect defenses. 3. The council ships fired everything they had, desperate to stop what was coming. 2. Shields failing. Parker screamed. 1. The vent port opened fully, beginning to release its plasma stream. Fire. Reed roared. The graviton cannon activated, its invisible beam striking the exact spot where the station's shields were down. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the laws of physics took over. The graviton beam met the plasma vent stream, creating a reaction that no one, not even the council, had predicted. The station's own power turned against it, the massive energies being forced back into its reactor core. Direct hit, Taylor confirmed. Energy readings off the scale. Through the main viewport, they watched as the first signs of their success became visible. The station's perfect symmetry began to break as internal explosions tore through its structure. The Aegis, pride of the Council's fleet, was beginning to die. The Aegis station began to break apart, massive explosions chain-reacting through its structure. The Council ships around it stopped firing, their crews seemingly frozen in shock as they watched their impregnable fortress die. Status report. Captain Reed ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge. Graviton cannon offline, Taylor reported. That shot burned out most of our weapon systems. Reactor stabilizing. Mills added from engineering. But we're running on fumes, Captain. Most systems are on emergency power. Dr. Parker's voice came next. Shields at 5%. Any more hits and we're done. Reed watched through the main viewport as sections of the massive station tore themselves apart. The Council ships were starting to move again, but not to attack. They were retreating, trying to escape the destruction of their supposedly invincible fortress. "Sir," Cooper called from his station, "I'm picking up massive energy spikes from the station's core. This is going to be big." "Thompson, get us out of here," Reed ordered. "Best speed on whatever power we have left." The Thunderchild's engines flared to life, pushing the wounded ship away from the dying station. Behind them, the Aegis' destruction accelerated. Its reactor core, destabilized by the graviton cannon's attack, was reaching critical levels. "Incoming transmission," Hayes reported suddenly. "Multiple channels. The Council is broadcasting to every ship in the sector." Reed straightened in his chair. Despite their battered condition, despite the fact that they were running on emergency power, he knew this was the moment that mattered most. "Put me on all frequencies," he ordered. "It's time they heard what humanity has to say." Hayes nodded, opening all communication channels. Reed stood, his uniform scorched and dirty, but his voice clear and strong. "This is Captain Thomas Reed of the UES Thunderchild. To all Council forces, you see before you the destruction of what you call the Eternal Sentinel. You believed it was impossible to defeat. You were wrong." He paused, letting his words sink in. "For too long, you've treated humanity as primitives, attacking our colonies, destroying our homes. You thought your advanced technology made you invincible. Today, we proved otherwise." The station's destruction continued behind them, providing a dramatic backdrop to his words. "We did not want this war. We did not start this conflict, but we are finishing it. Remember this day. Remember that one human ship, using what you called primitive technology, destroyed your strongest fortress." "Sir," Cooper interrupted quietly, "Council ships are responding. They're standing down, all weapons powered down." Reed nodded and continued. "We don't seek your destruction. We seek only to live in peace, to explore the stars as is our right. Remember the Aegis. Remember what happened here. And remember that if you force us to fight, humanity will prevail." As if to punctuate his words, the Aegis station's reactor finally went critical. The explosion lit up space like a newborn sun, the shockwave spreading outward in a perfect sphere of destruction. "Braced for impact," Hayes shouted. The wave hit them hard, but the Thunderchild's remaining shields held. When the light faded, nothing remained of the mighty fortress except scattered debris and a cloud of expanding gas. "Message received from Council Command," Cooper reported, his voice filled with disbelief. They're requesting a ceasefire. They want to talk." A cheer went up from the bridge crew. In engineering, Mills and his team hugged each other. Dr. Parker slumped in relief at her station. They had done it. They had actually done it. Reed sat back in his command chair, feeling the weight of the past hours. "Send our coordinates to command. Tell them we'll need a tow home." He looked around at his tired but proud crew. "And tell them the Thunderchild completed her mission." "Sir," Thompson spoke up from navigation, "look." On their long-range sensors, they could see Council ships changing course, moving away from human colonies they had been threatening. The message had been received, loud and clear. Hayes moved to stand beside his captain. "Think they'll keep the peace?" Reed watched the Council ships retreat. "They will, because now they know. Now they understand that humanity isn't just another species to be pushed around. We're a force to be reckoned with." As the Thunderchild limped home, her crew exhausted but victorious, word of their achievements spread through human space. The ship that had done the impossible. The crew that had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. But most importantly, they had shown that humanity, despite being called primitive, despite being underestimated, could stand against anyone in the galaxy. The Council had learned their lesson, and the Thunderchild had made history.